All righty. So we are coming tonight to discuss trusting your higher self, your intuition. Um, and we have Trina with Laughing Goddess 888, and I am Linda with the Mystical Woo Academy. And we've got Trina. She's here to share just all of her knowledge with us. She's been on a healing journey to healing spirit and body, and just sharing all of her knowledge and just doing an amazing job at it. We appreciate her being with us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Trina.
Okay, that works for me. I think all of you I recognize, or most of you. So I'm going to do my story in the short version, just in case. About 2.5 years ago, I was a shell of who I am now. I had a ton of medical problems, some of which were likely to be the end of me. I had MS. It was bad enough at that point that I occasionally choked on my own food, which is one of the signs that it's not going to end well. It's often what makes it fatal is vital systems breaking down, and being able to eat is often one of them. I was in an unhappy relationship. At the time, I characterized it as abusive, not physically, but emotionally. But I do realize now, through my own shadow work and healing, that one, I didn't help the situation with my own codependence. So I did have some responsibility in the matter, that he couldn't have risen up to change anything because I never told him how unhappy I was. Or if I did, as soon as it was challenged, I backed right back down. And I was also genuinely, as you realize, everybody has their own shadows, their own traumas. And I was a victim in his private war against himself. It wasn't personal against me. It was him against him, and I was just collateral damage. But during it, I had lost any sense of myself. I literally had relegated myself to just being mom to take care of my kids, so that hopefully, in my thought, they'll make it to 18 and be able to get out and away from them. But through the course of my own journey, he's been able to heal a lot too, and has stepped up as a father, which is honestly all I ever wanted, was for it to be the best for the kids. I turned towards life, started eating a whole food, plant-based diet with my then partner, who also was healing. And what it was we finally reached the point where we had somebody. We wanted to live instead of waiting for it to be over. And we turned towards life, and our turning towards life was cleaning up our diet and really saying, I want to live. So in the process of doing that, we did get a bit healthier. I got to what I like to call the Wonderland, where there was a 1 at the front of my weight, and I was thrilled because I had been well over 300 pounds. But I was still very unhealthy. And the autoimmunes and everything, I mean, I still had them because the inflammation was better. It wasn't as debilitating, but pains, weakness, things like that were still a part of my regular life. And then December 19th of 2021, I started spontaneously channeling dimensional beings, which thankfully I have a partner who was incredibly supportive, especially after he had a 3-hour conversation with a fifth dimensional Lyran. And I came out of it, and things were being talked about, I found out, that were way above my pay grade. So there's no way I knew these things. And that is really when everything fully changed, for a few reasons. One of which, we suddenly knew it was real. Like all the books on spirituality, until you touch it, until something truly miraculous or that doesn't fit into your idea of the matrix happens, it can be very hard to keep faith, especially because for a long time we see the world and the universe as an attacker because things aren't going the way we want them to. Turns out things aren't going the way we want them to because we're not letting them. We're putting the past on it, our expectations on it. We're beating ourselves up. And if you're putting a lot of energy into, well, I'm just clumsy and I break everything I touch. Guess what? You end up breaking everything you touch. And I use that example because that was one of mine, was I had always told myself how clumsy I was. Turns out once I worked on that, I'm not. I'm no more clumsy than anyone else. And sometimes even probably less so because I'm more aware and worried about it, but I no longer worry. Now I just know I'm going to do something, I'll be a little extra careful, and it works beautifully. What I want to shift into actually as part of my story, though, is where things are going. Because look towards the future. We are in the process. We do divine union couples counseling because we started our ascension path together. When I started channeling, that was our awakening event for both of us. And so we've gotten a very unique insight really into seeing how this process looks very different to the divine masculine compared to the divine feminine. And what has been wonderful in the journey is finding out we usually mean the same thing. We just use different words for it or have different expectations we put on ourselves because society says that those are the roles we're supposed to have and everything. So we do that as well as the ascension coaching towards the goal. And we actually think we're working on it for a retreat center and a permanent place to build a community. So I'm very, very excited that that's how it's happening. Now that we're done the story part, moving into honing your intuition. First of all, everybody has intuition. All of us, we are a balance of divine masculine and divine feminine. We tend to use divine masculine for the integrator. Integrator is the master of how to navigate in the 3D world. You got plans, lists, spreadsheets, systems, different ways that things have to happen in order to minimize any problems. In fact, the integrator's mind, one of the pitfalls that they seem to struggle with a lot is seeing what can go wrong in everything. And then they're focusing so much on the what can go wrong, which first of all, really brings your energy and your vibration down to always be dwelling in the negative. Bad things are going to happen anyway. And the best you can do is be prepared for how you handle them, but without putting them there until they actually happen. The amount of energy that is completely wasted. I love it. Yes, me too. The amount of energy that ends up wasted in the process of worrying about every possible thing that could go wrong, rumination, can be very difficult. The feminine side is what we call the intuitive. You feel, you sense, but you can't explain how you know, which is very frustrating to the integrator. We both have both in us and in a balance, but it's whatever balance, when you're balanced, is right for you, which sounds like a horrible commercial, see what balance is right for you. But we both have both sides. We all have both sides. I shouldn't say both because, I don't want to exclude my non-binary people out there, but we are all a balance. But we all have intuition. And that means even the integrator, even the one completely locked in everything has to be logic and science, there's intuition there too. The way we've seen actually it tends to work is the integrator, the intuition will tell them where to look. And then the integrator figures out why that was a good answer. But how many times do you sit there and go, I knew it. You didn't know how you knew it, but you knew it. The integrator usually needs to prove that out a lot before they can start to trust their own intuition. Ways I like to build your intuition is start playing a little game with yourself. You're at a bank of elevators. Feel which one's going to come up first. Because the more you do it, you start to realize disproportionately you're getting it right. Because just like any skill that you practice, it gets better and you get better at it. Now, the intuition is a quiet voice. It really is for most people. I mean, if you have guides yelling in your head, it helps. But even without that, it's a quiet voice, but you can feel it. Now, for some of us, it's in the gut. For many people, it's in the heart. And I think that has to do with energetics, how you particularly feel it when your intuition is doing it. But one of the ways I found to really know how you feel about a topic and whether the intuition is pulling you that way is make a decision. You don't have to stick with it, make the decision, because as soon as if someone says, do you want the red pill or the blue pill? and you say, you know what, I'll take the blue pill. In that moment, you'll know if you actually meant red, because you will suddenly go, damn it, I meant the red pill. Correct it, because that is how you sit there and you really know how you feel. Because if you make a decision and it's not in alignment, you'll know it. You feel it. You go, you know, this isn't feeling right. And it can be difficult to let go of the things that, you know, well, I already invested like 3 weeks into doing whatever. That's okay. It's okay to completely change your path at any point. And I know that sounds counterintuitive to the ways they teach us in 3D, you know, stick with it, fight it out. If you're getting a bunch of resistances and your gut's telling you not to, listen, because it always does know better. Now, ways to quiet so that you can hear the intuition more are the same things that most of the light worker paths talk about. Sound healing for some, meditation, anything that helps relax the, we have a system that builds up our energy. And we have to learn to quiet that down, because on a hormonal, chemical, that's a better word, on a chemical level, we are often in a fight or flight response hypersensitivity. Well, then your intuition is going to feel like firecrackers going off, hard to understand, because you're assaulted by both what you're sensing in the physical world and what you're feeling energetically. So you want things, thank you, autonomic nervous system. You want to be able to find ways to quiet that. I know many people who use breath work in order to gain those states. You have to find what resonates with you. I like nice soft frequency music, laying down and relaxing. Hot baths are a big thing for me to help calm that system down. If my skin starts feeling like really buzzy with way too much energy, a really nice salt bath is wonderful for that. And then listen, lay there, sit in meditation. If you fall asleep while you're laying there, I usually meditate laying down, which is, you know, odd for some people, but I was bedbound for a lot of the time with the MS, so I got really good at it. And then let your thoughts wander. Now, here is a couple things. When you let your thoughts wander to see what comes to you, the first things that are going to come to you is all the crap you've been worrying about. Notice it, acknowledge it, but don't follow it down the rabbit hole. You know, you really need to get that job. Are you going to do the thing for the interview? I know, I'll address the job later, and let it go. And then you start to get to deeper things. And when you hit something that you haven't thought of before, then let your mind follow it so you can unwind it and see what your intuition in the universe is trying to tell you. Now, I like to address, especially because the integrator will, you know, be careful that it's not your lens, be careful that it's not your fears. And that is the answer to determining whether it is the voice of your intuition and the universe, or whether it's an ego trick, is fear. If it is of God, it is not fearful. It is not scary. Now, there's a difference between the feeling of, you know what, I shouldn't go that way, and, oh my God, if I go that way, something horrible is going to happen to me. If it's the second, it's an ego trick. It's your lens. Now, it doesn't mean that your intuition still didn't say, don't go that way. But the message itself is clouded and tainted by your ego. Because again, our ego wants us to be in fear, because if we're in fear, it's in control. We can justify all sorts of atrocities in the name of our survival. And the ego loves telling us we won't survive. You know, something bad happens and we extrapolate it out to our doom all the time. We will sit there, you know, I broke my toe. Now I'm never going to be able to dance. That's not true. And then we go, well, if I didn't do that, then this is going to, what if it gets infected? What if I lose my foot? Like, we really tend to build up these exaggerations in our head, and they're all part of the ego trying to keep control over everything. So determining what is your ego and what is your intuition, there's a lot of layers of it that are going to be personal. So I can't necessarily help you pinpoint, but just like everything else, as you work through it, your intuition will start to tell you. I mean, I've reached the point where I will, rail at something I see on Facebook and go, oh yeah, that's totally my ego, because I know I don't want to judge other people. I can say that's not an action I prefer to have in my universe, but I'm going to use the example that just happened, the shooting at, in Michigan. My first reaction was, oh my God, how horrible. And it is. But you know what? That gunman wouldn't have done it if he wasn't compelled to by his own traumas, his own demons. It obviously was for the highest good. The souls that passed signed up to do that, maybe to push the issues so that things get talked about more, maybe so they get changed. I don't know. I don't have the omnipotence of God, but I trust God that does. And so those things wouldn't exist if they weren't for the highest, but it can be very hard to remember that. And your intuition the ego side of it is where you rail at the injustice and the unfairness. Because I mean, really, how many things that you would never really want to do, just even being a bitch to somebody, you don't want to be that way. You don't want to be angry, but we do because we feel victimized or life is unfair. Well, it's the, well, what about, somebody says, well, you do this. Well, yeah, what about when you do this? And all of that are ego tricks and mechanisms that can cloud the intuition messages. And wow, this did not have a lot of time. So let me see what else I can add, because that really is the basis. I know we're going to need a lot of questions because this journey is very, very personal. My butterflies in my stomach and I feel nauseous is how I react to negative energy, but to someone else, that might mean it's their highest bliss. And so everybody's, again, is different and unique for them. There is a very, there's times you want to argue with your higher self because you don't want to do the work. I mean, I have been there where my higher self is telling me I need to do something, and I have felt like I was cemented down with my own fears, doubts. Where do I start? If I start this, what if I don't finish it? What if I fail? What if other people laugh at me and go, wait, you're talking to aliens? Yeah, you're effing nuts. All of these things that cause us to go, okay, maybe I won't, are also ego tricks. But your intuition, as you build it, will nag at you until you do and tell you, you know what, it's always going to work out. Because again, we all make it. We've all made it. Time, I should explain that probably better. Time is an illusion. Everything happened at once. Picture like those of you that are old enough to remember DVDs. Now we're on to digital everything, but on a DVD, it all exists. It's all on that disc. We just watch it using the mechanism of time so that we can understand how it happened in steps. But we've already made it. We're just watching our own story of how we made it. So everything that happens, and yes, this includes the things that you consider horrific in your life, are what it took to get us to our best outcome, our full godhood. And our best outcome is fantastic for everybody. And that can be hard when you think of some of the people that are committing the atrocities. But here's the thing, that's the role they're playing for our unfoldment. In their unfoldment, they're not the bad guy. In fact, they're going through their own things in order to reach their full development. And we may play a villain role in their life, but that isn't the life we're experiencing. I just realized some of this is probably more confusing, so I may have to do a cosmology class at some point. But really, your intuition will nag you worse than any stereotype of a spouse, will nag you incessantly. I remember there was an occasion where not long after I had awakened and started learning how to do all of this with my guides, I didn't want to tell anybody because I'm like, they're going to think I'm nuts. and I had to deal with something with my ex. And so I gave him like a canned response. And for the next like hour and a half, my guides were like yelling in my head going, you know, you lied and you're not going to be okay with that. And there I had to go to someone I still had a lot of fear of and say, so I've been channeling dimensional beings. This is what's going on, because I lied. I mean, it was a lie of omission, but it still chafed me. And I knew that that's exactly, and I had to rectify it. And actually it went completely fine. I mean, he wasn't necessarily thrilled. My dad was a bit eccentric. And of course his response was, you know, you might be crazy. But that was okay, because it was better than being dishonest about who I was and what was going on. And my tuition nagged me incessantly until I did so. And that is part of the process, that as you start to listen and you start to feel, and especially for the integrator, as it proves itself time and time again, because that was vital for my partner, was to see that when we listen to the intuition, it works out. And not just mine, his. And his has been developing absolutely amazingly once you can trust it. And learning to trust it is the little tricks, like I was saying, with the elevator and things like that. Give yourself things where you get wins just by going, ooh, I think it's going to be this one. And you're not going to hit every time, but you're going to start to realize that the more you do it, you become disproportionately correct, which for the integrator is wonderful to have facts and numbers that say, look, as I do this, it happens. The universe responds to you. And Nate, you're cracking me up, because I can tell you're identifying as integrator every time I say something about it. But it does. It's very self-affirming when it starts to prove itself out. And that's really when your side gets to embrace it, because, you know, if there's a system that works, even if it sounds crazy, if it works, it's not crazy. I'm actually going to open up a few minutes early to questions, because as I said, this is a very personal topic. So if people have questions, I would love to be able to help you with your own. I see Linda looking.
I had to find Nate. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I didn't even know you could do that. Terrifying. So yeah, it's interesting that we're talking about this tonight, because as someone who I'm learning deeply identifies with the integrator mindset, I had a realization today. I don't know if it was my guides or what exactly it was, but basically I, for the first time in months, saw the whatever microcosm of the plan for my life that I can fathom.
Sure.
By recognizing that what the universe has been driving me towards is that I have to let go of my need to ruminate. I have to let go of my need to be in control and all of these things. And it's funny, because all of my ketamine trips told me exactly that. And yet I couldn't fucking understand it until, for whatever reason, I was in therapy tonight, and ironically enough, of all of the movies, so I'm a massive nerd, and
that's okay, me too.
A quote from The Dark Knight went through my head, with the Joker saying, then that's the one rule you're going to have to break. And specifically, that rule, which I hadn't admitted to myself until probably tonight, is that every single fucking time I've dealt with this disorder, I've done it about 80%. I've never gone the full 100, where you're like, maybe you are an awful human being and you just have to fucking sit with that. And exactly like you said, it's because I don't know how.
Right.
I've never, and it's heartbreaking for me. And I guess I really appreciate that thing you said about trying to give yourself little wins with your intuition, because it really straight up feels like my guides they fully recognize how fucked my mind is right now. And they're like, okay, we're going to show you stuff through other people. That's the only way we're going to send you messages, because your lens is so bad that you don't like anything we put with you. You're going to like, even when I'm meditating, all of the like worst stuff comes up. And so, yeah, I guess when you're in that place is one of the most effective places to start, just those little wins with the intuition. Or what would you suggest?
The
in that
two
way?
things I would suggest is, one, yes, give yourself little wins, not just with the intuition, but every time that you resist the OCD thing, every time if you get a shower despite feeling kind of depressed and like you had to motivate yourself to do it, cheer the fuck Nate on, because that's the first part, is you have to build yourself back up and feel worthy. But the other is getting out of that fight or flight constant, because then you feel assaulted by the world. If you're in a state where you are hypersensitized, everything is so much more difficult. And what I'll do is I'll pull some things and probably get them to you before our call tomorrow on like breath work and things like that, ways that you can start to get your body feeling less assaulted. So between giving yourself the wins and getting your body out of that fight or flight mode, which is always in your mind, then everything's going to end in my destruction. I'm going to hurt the people I love. I'm going to destroy the world. I mean, we really do. And depending on the level of then what you're tapping into and can distort, sometimes you think you're literally going to blow up the whole world. Like it's got to be you and you're going to be the villain. Here's the thing, you're experiencing this. Therefore, you're not the villain. It doesn't end that way because this is your ascension journey. And if it's your ascension journey, it all works out in the end. You just have to get through all of those fears and all of the things that we're telling ourselves of why you're not worthy, why you're not worthy of being a fully autonomous being. Because in your case, and I can see it, you are afraid to take your own power because you're afraid you're going to hurt other people with it. You don't trust yourself yet, but you will as you start to work through the things that get you out of that. I mean, picture it like a dog that was beat and you try to feed it and it snaps at you. It's not the dog's fault. It's not your fault. You're feeling all the assault of how you're perceiving the world attacking you, and therefore you're responding in kind. But that is something that we can work on, and I look forward to it. Anybody else? Maybe. I mean, I don't mind keeping Nate. I just think we touched the important stuff, so.
Am I right with my comment that like your intuition is like the little voice in your head that talks to you, that tells you like, hey, maybe you should go do this, or hey, there's something wrong, you need to go listen to your voice.
This
Listen
is
to
one
your
of those
heart.
cases where I'm going to say yes and no. And what I mean by that, I'll explain. I never leave those without the explanation. Is that little voice is how you're translating your intuition. So the little voice can be colored by your lens. You know, if you're really afraid of something, that little voice may tell you something that has to do with your fear, which is again, how you can tell if it is or isn't, or at least whether your lens may be in the way, because it's never, again, fear-based. But the feeling in your body, which if you close your eyes and really focus on how your body feels, most of us can feel the tingle that is in our body of how alive our cells are and the blood flow and everything else. If you focus on it, I mean, it's a great meditative technique actually, is to kind of move your awareness into your hands. Feel your hands, feel whether they feel cold, clammy, like really focus on being in the now. And in the process of doing that, you start to realize that you feel your intuition in a particular spot as well. For me, I feel it more in the solar plexus than up in the heart. I know a lot of people that feel it in the heart chakra. For a lot of us, it's even lower and it's in the gut. And the gut for me, again, gets engaged if it's a lot of very negative, especially angry energy, which I know relates to my own traumas, angry father, angry ex. But that is my response to it. So that's why I said yes and no. The voice is in response to your intuition, letting you know that something going on and pay attention. But it itself isn't the intuition. Did that
Thank
help?
you.
You're welcome.
Do you still have MS, or did this meditation and healing journey
Fully
healed it?
cured it. My
Holy
MRIs
shit.
are clean. I don't have lesions anymore, and I had lesions on both my brain and my spine. They're healed, which is supposedly not possible, and it is part of why I knew helping other people find their healing was going to be my path, because
You're a medical miracle. Wow.
I am. And we all can be. I have realized everything is curable. We have met a guy who cured stage 4 cancer in his leg. Like a year and a half later, he's still cancer free. And the spiritual path really allows you to heal anything physical, because all physical ailments, the emotional body is wounded in that spot. And that's what it anchors onto and then proliferates from. Once you can heal the emotional body, it allows the physical to heal. You can heal the physical as well. But in the process of healing the physical as well, if you don't clear the emotional, it comes back. I had gastric bypass surgery 17 years ago. I kept the weight off for about 7 years. And then it crept back up. And then I was, next thing I knew, 340 pounds again. And there was nothing I could do. I had already done the gastric bypass. I tried tons of diets, everything else, didn't do it. And my health just kept deteriorating because I hadn't worked on why I was addicted to food. I used food to fill the emptiness, that void that was created by me not loving myself. I can put a barrier around myself by being overweight, because then other people, well, they just don't like me because they're fat phobic. I didn't have to take ownership of why they didn't like me. They probably actually even did like me, but I projected that they didn't like me and that it was because of my weight. So it was a barrier that I had done. I had to work through all of those shadows to be able to really let that go. And I'm healthier than I was as a teenager, and I didn't think that was possible. So anything is healable, but it takes working on both the emotional body and the physical, but much less the physical. Ironically, self-care for the physical, but a lot of the medical stuff and everything, if you do the emotional work, the physical part resolves itself. Anything else? I thought this was going to be a busy topic.
Yeah, I thought there would be a lot of conversation. Can we?
I have another one. Sorry.
That works. No, don't be sorry.
So like, to start the healing process of
Right.
your emotions, I'm in therapy and I've been meditating, but what other suggestions do you have to heal more?
The first two pillars, I guess I would call them, are the first two classes I did. Shadow work, because honest self-reflection, and that's what shadow work does. You have to look at your own part that you play in your own suffering, which is not an easy thing to do. But that is a vital part of being able to let that go. And then the one on boundaries, because healing yourself is great, but not if you're going to keep re-traumatizing yourself by not protecting your voice, your ability to express yourself, and honestly, the true you that most of us bury under the layers of who we think everyone else wants us to be. The third pillar, because there has to be 3 pillars, it's just one of those things that are on there, is self-care. And it's hard as a mom. Believe me, I was there, but find a way to dedicate some time and attention to you. even if all you can manage to do is wake up a half hour early in the morning, exhausted as you are, do it anyway, to have time for like a real bubble bath, or go get a massage, or just dye your hair the color that you've always wanted, something that really resonates and makes you feel good about you. One of the best ways to show self-care is actually to eat healthy. I mean, we kind of rail against it because, I remember a time when I thought all the bad food is the only thing that tasted good.
I'm on the phone.
But by eating healthy, you're
I'm
showing
on
your
the
body that
phone. I
you
love
give a
you.
shit and you're not poisoning it. And so taking the time to prepare like whole food, healthy meals is probably one of the easier self-care routines you can do, because you've got to eat and feed the family anyway. And so it's a great way to put some positive attention into taking care of yourself. And that's the third pillar. So I would say shadow work in order to find what you need to heal in your emotions that do have effects on our body. Second, learn to have healthy boundaries so that you don't get re-traumatized by giving your power away again. And then third, self-care.
Can I add on to that?
Sure, please.
So one of the things that I found tremendously helpful for myself is those, I love the three pillars. Those are exactly like, if I was to list them out, very, very similar as to what I did when I was in a relationship, a marriage with an alcoholic, and fibromyalgia, chronic pain,
Mhm.
cancer, all of these other, like, you name it, they were throwing the diagnoses and the pills at me, right? And in complete overwhelming chaos on that merry-go-round, the hamster wheel, whatever it is that you want to think. So bite-sized chunks, like, I know you said 30 minutes, and sometimes 30 minutes is way too fucking big. So just even 5 minutes, set the alarm, wake up 5 minutes before, even if it's 5 minutes, stay up 5 minutes longer or whatever it is. But whatever works for you, I'm just saying, whoever this message is for, it can be bite-sized pieces. It
Right.
could be 2 minutes. Like, take 2 minutes and walk outside. I used to, like, I smoked cigarettes for a really long time, and I smoked because that gave me that
No,
gave
I
me the
get it.
time. It gave me the time, like, not that I really even smoked the cigarettes. Like, by the time I figure out that I was what I was doing and how that fit, but it was because it was giving me the time outside of the house, because I didn't smoke. It
Right.
didn't happen in the house, but I stepped outside. It gave me that time out in the fresh air. It gave me time
There's an
to,
irony to saying fresh air with cigarettes, though.
well, yes, I know there's an
But I
irony to
get
this,
it.
but
I
it got
do.
me out of the house. It got
Yeah.
me out there walking up and down. It
Yeah.
got me breathing a little bit more. Really, I was holding the cigarette in my hand.
I get it.
Essentially, that's what it was. I really wasn't smoking. By the time I was done and I quit, I wasn't, it was burning. I was holding it in my hand. But that was my way to get
Yeah.
those few minutes. And then once that was done, then everything else I was able to, like, minutes moving, increasing those. So now I can have an hour to myself. That's my self-care. And that's a priority, and I build that in. But I started with 2 or 3 minutes.
And that's a great thing to point out, because I mean, I remember it wasn't that long ago. I mean, my kids are now 15 and 20, but it wasn't that long ago that, I couldn't remember a time in years that I had been able to go to the bathroom by myself. So you really getting that personal space, and it's hard, especially as a mom, but you have to build in little bits as you can, because self-care is really vital. But self-care isn't just, massages and bubble baths. As I said, start with something that you have to do anyway, eating. Find things that make you feel good about the fact that you're eating them. And here's an intuition thing. Chocolate cake may sound like it'll feel really good to eat, but your intuition knows if you eat like half of a chocolate cake, you're not going to feel good afterwards. And so make choices that can still taste delicious, but, don't have a bunch of chemicals, aren't very highly processed. really learn how to cook just a couple really good whole food recipes. And it can change a lot of things, and start small with that too. All changes are, we have to start small. If you had told me, let me see where we are, February. If you had told me a year ago, which would have been 3 months after Awakening started, half of the things that we have experienced, I would have said you were nuts. You couldn't have told me then things like we are all eternal and we all make it and we have divinity inside all of us. We are the universe and God experiencing itself. I would have gone, well, that sounds wonderful. And like you got it from some awesome temple in Tibet. That's great. But what does it actually mean? It wouldn't have done me any good. Now I can utilize that. If I'm upset, guy cuts us out in traffic and it's like, oh my God, I don't know my God anymore. Oh, okay. Is that what we're doing? Because I know that we're going to be okay. I have been able to internalize that. Something that my partner Peter actually has mentioned many times that he read was basically someone saying, I'll give you the secret of the universe, but you can't do anything with it now. It won't help you. And the guy that won't give it to me anyway or whatever. And he said, you're eternal. And that is exactly what it's like if you don't take small steps so that your understanding who you see you are going to be grows. We evolve to the highest us that we can imagine. But guess what? The bar keeps getting raised. And we then dream about an even bigger us. When this started, I was doing energy healing stuff is how it started coming through, and the channeling. I thought I was going to be a channel, sit there, do videos, bring the messages through, and that was it. Then I thought I was going to have a healing center. I had this great dream of like a healing clinic where it would all be like Reiki type work, and that would be awesome. It has just kept growing. And the latest thing is a hub and community and a place for light workers to gather, work into the community and have people come for their work, but also to architect our new earth together. That's another thing. Had you told me a year ago, I wasn't ready. And so everything we do has to be in incremental steps. It's why we don't get the whole experience at once, because then we would just go, this was the beginning of the story, this was the end, and we wouldn't experience what it's like to grow and learn more and be able to utilize more. So that's how we get our incremental steps so that we can appreciate it all. Anyone else? I have a question. Linda, do you know what my class is next week? Because I would have to look it up, but I'm curious.
I don't, conscious
living then,
yes,
probably. Yes. Okay, great. Helps if I have a heads up, but not really. Whatever needs to come out always does. So
if you're open to it, we have Sharon with us tonight. So we have a couple good classes that are going to go right along with this. And I think that, you shared and you talked about like the different things that we can do to support us. So we have a meditation class where Candace Maliko's is going to teach us tomorrow, meditation techniques. And then we have a sound bath. If you're local to us, we have a sound bath with Michelle on Saturday, and then Sharon is going to be teaching a inner child class, and I think it goes along with this really well.
Yeah, it does.
I think that if you're open to it, I would love to have Sharon unmute herself and maybe talk about what she's.
That would be great.
Piggyback on what you've talked about tonight.
I think that would be wonderful. And I'm assuming, well, you'll be able to tell me, but like reparenting yourself and things like that, I'm assuming. So I'm going to mute myself so you can step in.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Sharon, go ahead. I think I unmuted you.
Sure.
So go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Trina. So it's been interesting to hear what you have to say. I've got all kinds of parts and have all kinds of opinions about all this stuff. But yeah, what I'm doing next Monday is since this is February, be your own best Valentine, a play date with your inner child. And I'll share a little bit about my journey with inner child work, reparenting, and reconnecting to my creativity. So all the stuff that you see behind me here, except for that painting of the women, everything else is stuff that I've created in the last 2.5, 3 years since I began to reconnect with my inner child. My connection to my creativity was blocked from a very young age, and I didn't create or make anything for most of my life. So reconnecting with my inner child and finding joy in simple things in nature and learning to create has been really joyous. So now my next step is connecting with my more adult parts and also my inner team. So I'm good at being a parent to my inner child parts in a lot of ways, but there's, it's a process, right? So anyway, yeah, so I'm going to guided meditation to connect with our inner loving parent part and our inner child, and then invite them to play and create together and make a Valentine or whatever they'd like to do. I'll also guide people in planning a date out in real life, getting in touch with what our desires are, those little desires from our little people deep inside that kind of like hold, I think, some deep truths. I think our inner children hold love, and they hold a lot of the pain. So for me, it's been a balance, like that deep inner work connecting to the wounded child, but also connecting to the playful, joyful part of myself, the creative part of myself. So it holds both of those. So we'll do that, and I'm trying to remember what we're gonna do. And then we'll plan like an in real life date that you can do outside on your own and experience that and kind of share our experience of what it was like to create and experience some self-love and some inner child connection. So yeah.
It's wonderful. Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, Trina, I think it goes perfectly. I love how it aligned. Synchronicity has aligned you guys so close together that it just worked out. I think it's going to be perfect to take what Trina has shared with us tonight and allow that to integrate over the next few days as we move into what Sharon is going to share with us on Monday. I'm super excited for it. So I know that reparenting, definitely, like Sharon said, I think I'm parenting my younger self really well, but that teen, yeah, there's resistance there. Teen Linda is not too happy with me these days. So I'm looking forward to getting in touch with her. So Trina, do you have anything else you want to add? We've got 12 more minutes.
What I would love to say with the reparenting thing and where it worked with me is it was really hard for me to work on my inner child. I just had a lot of childhood trauma. I got in a relationship with a wonderful partner that gave me the safe space to be my little girl and heal that. I actually haven't had, my teenager was easy, but my teenager was honestly when I thought having the best time of my life until this. I was very in touch with who I was as a teenager. I had basically said all the trauma of my child. I moved out at 17 to make my own life. So my teenager actually was Lottie. I'm having a harder time and working through now, reintegrating back into being an adult. After letting my younger self out to play, how to touch and do my adult woman self without, that sounded so bad and not the way I meant it. But getting back in touch with who I am without losing what I've gained by healing my inner child. And that's where I am in my journey currently, is how you move into the one without losing what you have gained from the other. And I am navigating it, but there's a lot more shadows than I actually expected from the you have to be responsible adult, stuff we're told our whole life, even as children. So once I let that out and I was like, I'm allowed to play, I kind of didn't want to stop always playing. And so that's part of what I've been working on. So, but that's it. I'm good.
Yeah, no, if I could just jump in, that's kind of where I am too. It's like, there's part of me that feels like if I it's actually, no, my inner child isn't worried about it. She's like, she trusts me that I'll be there for her and that I'll connect with her. But I have other parts that are like, no, we can't do, we're gonna, they're kind of using that to, anyway, yeah, there's just tricky. I got lots of parts. Tricky, but I love my inner child. She is very creative and very fun and brings me a lot of joy.
That's wonderful.
So we have a question on that. So, we're talking about reparenting, we were talking about inner child, like inner teen and whatever else, but also like bringing that in to differentiate between our ego, our intuition, our like all these freaking different parts, right? So my mind, like I'm thinking guides and like all these other messages. Like, do you have anybody, Trina, do you have like uh
A perspective that will help with that?
yeah, like how do we bring
Yes,
this? I know what I
I
do
do
and
actually.
put it together in
How
words
I
first.
have been envisioning it for, as I was realizing these things during my journey, is picture we are a gem. And every facet will look differently, refract the light differently, have a different experience, but they are all still parts of the gem that is us. So I have a mom facet. I have a little girl facet. I have humor of a 15-year-old boy facet. I have all of these parts. All of them are me. Well, all of them are me except for the ones I used to make up because it's what I thought other people wanted me to be. But we still have very different parts of our true selves. There are times that mama bear thing is what will come out. Very rarely now, because I am getting better at not seeing the world as an attacker, which means I need to defend as mama bear a lot less. But that's part of who I am. I'm also the, granola eating, hug a tree and love everybody hippie is a huge part of how I am growing and feeling. And I was like goth and dark. And again, not that that's not beautiful and wonderful too, but that was me for 25 or 30 years. As I'm embracing more of the light, I'm going, the hippies had it right. That's a big part of me. So, whether you're going to be, Persephone or Kali, they're still all part of you. And so they're all whatever facet of you is needed at the time. And that's at least the perception that allows me to be okay with having so many faces and realizing they are all me. They're just me depending on the situation.
I love that. Thank you. Does anybody have thoughts, or like I saw a couple of you that have your cameras undone, probably just two of you that have your cameras undone, but do you have thoughts on any of that you want to share? Anything that came up? I'm not going to call anybody out, but any messages anyone's received tonight?
I actually would like to reply to Stacya's comment.
Yes, yeah.
I believe a lot of us suffered that as a child and then had it reinforced by partners. It is definitely the type of thing I'm talking about when I say that you need to work on your own shadows, because when you hear that voice that's telling you, shh, they're going to be mad at you if you speak up, that is not at all from source. That is your own ego keeping you feeling victimized and attacked. So, because we can justify almost anything if we think we're doing it in retribution. But I am sure that as you go through your work, you will start to feel okay to speak your truth, but it takes time. It can take a lot of time depending on the traumas you have and stuff. Don't put a timetable on it, because that's another thing we often do when we're on a spiritual path is we want it all right now. And then, the longer you hold on to how fast it has to happen, the slower it takes. It's the watch pot, except it really does work that way. If we're needing it to happen yesterday, it's going to take its sweet time. But if you go, you know what, I'm just going to let it go and it'll happen as long as I'm working towards it. It will happen when it's ready. It tends to happen a lot faster. So I'm sure that as you do your work, you will find your voice more and more. And if you ever need, when you're ready to start it, I don't mind talking to you to help you find your voice. But I do think you're going to need some of the shadow work and everything before you're ready to. And that's okay too. I'm not patient either.
Willow, did you want to share tonight?
I didn't really want to, but apparently I need to. And this isn't anybody physical that's telling me I need to.
Mhm.
Anyway, so when I first started this journey about a year ago, well, it was about a year ago, and I asked Phoenix, I said, hey, will you be my mentor? And Phoenix is like, I'm new into this game too, so I'll help you when I can. So I was kind of reaching out and looking at different things, but I had to rename my inner child. I mean, she wanted to be renamed, and I accepted it. I'm like, okay, cool. And then my higher self, oh, well, this is my name. Okay. And, and then I talk to people and some people are like, no, that's never happened. But it's like, well, I guess that's my event. That's mine. That's how I'm healing. That's how I'm connecting, with myself. Does it make me sound crazy? Sometimes I think it does, but I mean, you're talking about crazy.
All of this makes us sound crazy to people who are not at a vibrational place to have touched any of it. And that's okay, because you know why we want to sound crazy to them? They fall out of our vibration. They stay away from the crazy people. And then we get to live our life. It's actually beautiful to be found crazy by the people that don't resonate with you anymore.
Yeah, I'm kind of learning that because one time I told my parents that I talked to trees and they told me I was flat out crazy. And so it kind of was like a dagger to my heart, It's like, how dare you, how dare you not accept who I am, but then I realized, you know what, how I looked, how their life is ran, I think it's crazy, so it's like, okay, I'll go down my path, you go down yours, and we'll,
And as you look at that, you'll reach the point where you also won't care anymore how other people see and that they see it as crazy. I had a lot of struggles with that because it was all about a mask I wore, a fake image that I made for whoever I was around at that time. There was a very different Trina that was at PTA meetings from the very different Trina that was playing D&D from the very different Trina that was mom. But they're not really you. And when you're speaking your truth, the people that it doesn't resonate with, some of them will, respond in a way that you're like, damn it, they're not seeing me or supporting me. They're just not meant to be part of your life as you continue to grow. And you don't need to do anything about it. It will just happen. And when you stop needing their approval, which again, I suffered with a lot, you realize none of it matters. Like they could be saying that you're the worst being ever. Okay. I saw something that says you can't argue with someone who is spiritually centered or a healed person because they'll okay you to death. You could be yelling anything and it's like, okay. And genuinely mean it. It's a difference between doing that 80 show or 70 show, whatever, and genuinely just saying, okay, because, their problems don't concern you. And they need to get it out, but it doesn't hurt you. It takes a long time to get there.
It does, and it hurts, especially when
until it doesn't, though.
Until it doesn't, and it's now getting to the point where it's beginning not to hurt as much because I'm realizing, you know what, I have to walk my own path just like they have to walk their own path. I mean, even though this is a person, I want them to accept who I am, but I'm realizing that I can't live my life for them,
right,
to accept me, so I have to move on. But yeah,
well, the good news is as you truly reach that point of being okay with yourself, no matter what their opinion is, they'll actually come around most of the time. They usually rise up to meet you once your need for them to rise up to meet you goes away, which is hardly frustrating, but how it works. you have to fully let go to have it back. But it works, and it's only there so that you gain your own belief in your own sovereignty without anyone else. How awesome is Willow? And when you can fully believe that, other people do too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of where I am, is like accepting who I am, because I still have that conditioning that was ingrained for me for 40 plus
Yeah.
years, so it's like trying to let that go. And I'm trying to get rid of that life that I think is kind of holding me back. I mean, I'm going through even things in my life, physical things, I'm letting them go because it's like that is holding me back. So I'm letting it go, letting it go. So, but I'm also learning that, talk, trusting your higher self is, I mean, that my higher self knows, but it's like, I have to, it's like, it's the letting go, because it's like,
Yeah.
I want this now. And my higher self's like, no.
Now it's not the divine timing, right? I mean, I have gone through that many, many times myself. And by the way, my higher self renames itself every time I have a new evolution. And I'm sure it's my way of being able to do it in stages the way I need. It's easier for my brain to compartmentalize. And so, my higher self also has renamed itself and keeps doing so. So,
Yeah. Which I thought it was weird. I was like, well, this is weird. But it was like, I find myself comforted when I call out for my higher self, when I'm laying in bed crying and I cry out for her, she's there. I know she's there.
that's wonderful. Yeah.
And I can sense her when she, comes around.
Yeah.
And reminds me and fluffs up my wings like, you're here, just relax, I got you. But, it takes a while to mentally
Right.
get that moss off that brain to accept it. So,
See, you knew you had to talk tonight.
I know I was laying there. I'm like, I'm not going to get on.
Not gonna do it.
I could be meaning call out Phoenix, but I won't.
Phoenix, do you need to share before we get off the call?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I know she did it.
Tonight, by the way.
That was our thing last week, to calling each other
Oh,
out.
right. Calling each
What did you
other
say, Trina?
Oh, I was just saying, I love those colors.
Thank you. Look, I got the stripes.
Mhm.
I think I need to cut it, but I was
Very
kind of
cool.
going for Trina look.
You did. You got Trina look. I love it. Love it.
All right, everyone, we're just after 8 o'clock, so I think it's probably time to say goodbye. Unless anyone has any last second things they want to shout out. We're good. I hope to see everyone tomorrow night. We'll be back here with Trina next Tuesday, Sharon on Monday, Michelle on Saturday. We got so many good things coming up. So thank you so much.
Invite your friends for tomorrow, please.
Tomorrow is a meditation via Zoom. Candace Malakote's going to be teaching different meditation techniques. And then, yeah, I don't remember what else we have. Candace, Wednesday, Sound Bath, Saturday, Sharon, Monday, Trina back again Tuesday. So looking forward to all of it that's coming up. Teen class will be on Saturday, I think, too. Phoenix and I need to connect on that. So if you know anyone interested in that, I'll go ahead and stop talking and sign off now. Have a great night.
Thank you.